stay in your room for a little while?
I didn't kill her. I didn't kill anybody.
Lucille Bates was young and attractive. Mr. Granger was single and alone. I simply wanted to explore their association.
Tony!
Bail him! Put him in the courtroom!
Get down!
Hey, it's lonely in there. What are you doing?
I'm sitting in the bathroom.
The bathroom?
Well, it would be a bathroom if they ever remembered to deliver the toilet out here.
Well, I don't really think we're gonna need it right away.
Well, why wait till the last minute, though?
Well, it's gonna be a long time between now and the last minute.
Young lady, you questioning my speed.
If there's one thing I never questioned, it's your speed.
Good girl. Come here.
You know what? I'm not so sure that this is where the bathroom should be.
They would have loved you at the pyramids.
No, no, no. I think the bathroom would look better. Right over there.
Honey, this is rooms we're talking about, not furniture. Oh, okay. Come on, follow me.
Okay.
Just say we do put the bathroom here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we put the bathroom here. That means we've got to move the study over here.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
From here, we move the living room. Living room goes over there.
Yeah.
Huh? Now we've got to add a door to the den so we don't have to go to the kitchen through the master bedroom. If that's the case, then in here, this will have to become the nursery. Get it?
Great. When do we start? You know what?
What?
I like talking about nurseries and other Petrocellis.
Listen, by the time we finish this house, our son will be too old to leave home.
Well, what makes you so sure that it's gonna be a boy? What about a girl?
Honey, I already have the sign made up. Petrocelli and Son, attorneys at law.
Well, what's wrong with Petrocelli and daughter, attorneys at law?
Okay, I'll have to change it then to Petrocelli and Petrocelli. Just to play it safe, huh?
Okay.
Junto al cuerpo de George Baldwin. Martin Granger, mayordomo del señor Baldwin, notificó el hallazgo a las autoridades.
You're the attorney for the Baldwin family. Well, there's been a murder at the ranch. The police are looking for Louis Baldwin.
Chopper Yankee Bravo to ground unit 4. I think I got something moving down there. Looks like the suspect. Description matches, and he's running like a scared jackrabbit.
But just nudge him over to us. did you two bring that toilet to the office? You act like two kids with a toy.
Let's see what we have here. There it is. The Marble Master Deluxe Sovereign Model 37B2. Instructions right here. Here we are. One upper mounting bolt. There it is. Oh, check. One lower mounting bolt. Check. One flush valve with brass coupling. No, it's not here. You call yourself an investigator? I mean, where does it fit?
Yes?
In here.
I see.
Not there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's not there.
Goodbye.
Well, I believe I mentioned that to him.
Honey, they found the Baldwin boy out in the desert. They charged him with murder.
One?
One.
I'll see you, baby.
Bye.
Well, Counselor, we've been looking forward to making your acquaintance since you joined us from New York. And just last Sunday, Mrs. Arnheit was saying we ought to have that new Italian lawyer and his wife over for a barbecue. Get your cup of coffee?
You got any Italian coffee?
What's that?
This? This Sheriff Arnheit is what they call a police report. It says here that you picked the kid up at 7:30 this morning.
Best we could do. Searching for him half the night and into the morning.
Gee, that's a shame. You know that you held yourself together long enough to interrogate that kid for 6 solid hours. You know, it's funny. It doesn't say anything here about informing the kid of his rights, or that thrilling little item about having an attorney present during an interrogation.
We questioned him as a material witness. He was in the house when the nurse got clobbered and he ran away, okay? After we charged him, we didn't ask him any more questions.
You didn't have to.
Where do you get off, Petrocelli, waltzing into San Remo like the king of Italy, telling me how to run my business?
First of all, it's Celli. The name is Petrocelli. And secondly, I'm here as counsel for the Baldwin family's law firm. That's how I get off. Now, if you pull one more trick like questioning that kid without my presence, I'll make sure they have you directing manure traffic at the stockyards. Now, when would Mrs. Arnheit like us over for that barbecue?
Sorry, Counselor. All the consultation was too busy. This will be okay?
Yeah, it's fine, thanks. I'm Anthony Petrocelli. I'm your lawyer. Now, Louis, I want you to tell me everything. But if you let loose with one harmless little lie, I guarantee you we're going to save the county a lot of money by pleading guilty. Now, sit up there.
What?
I said, sit up there and listen to yourself. Let's start off with your parents now. What about them?
My parents are both dead. I live with my grandfather.
What about Lucille Bates?
Well, the agency center. The other nurse had to go back east. She moved in a couple of months ago. We'd had a few other nurses in the meantime, but none had stayed on permanently. It was a big job caring for my grandfather, and we'd hoped this one would work out.
Hello. I'm Lucille Bates, the nurse, and this is Mr. LaSalle, my stepbrother.
Archie.
Not only had the agency recommended her highly, she was really pretty. My grandfather had had a stroke last year. He had difficulty walking, could hardly speak, but he could understand. I spent as much time with him as I could. Lucy was very efficient and got along well with grandfather. It didn't seem like just another job to her. She really seemed to care. I liked her, too. We used to talk a lot about all kinds of things. Well, you know how hot it was this summer. One night, she came to my room. I was thinking about Lucy while I was reading. It was much too warm to sleep. And then she came in. Maybe I even knew she would.
It's hot. Are you hot too?
Yeah.
Seems to be a little bit cooler in your room. You mind if I stay in your room for a little while?
I guess I'd been thinking about it from the day she moved in. We'd become pretty close, and Well, I guess I was stuck on her.
Oh, you don't mind. You don't mind at all, do you, Louis?
I'd never been with a woman like her before. It made me feel a lot older, and I enjoyed spending time with her. She was the only one around the ranch I could relate to.
I'll see you later. Bye.
Mr. Granger, our foreman, didn't like me much. I guess he couldn't understand why I preferred reading books to trading cattle.
How are you this morning, huh? Feeling better?
Anyway, he ruled the ranch with an iron fist, and he was devoted to my grandfather. Granger left the ranch to handle a cattle deal in Mexico, and I guess that's when things started to change. Well, the guy who brought Lucy a couple of months ago started hanging around. She began to pay more attention to him and less attention to grandfather in managing the household. I was getting worried, but I decided to wait and see if things would change. Well, everything really did change, but for the worse. Lucy stopped caring for grandfather, and the house was a mess. I knew Archie was the cause of all this, so I went to talk to him at the dog track where he worked. It was just about closing time. I had to tell him to stop coming around. I couldn't stand him being in our house anymore.
What are you doing here, Louis?
Stay away from my house. Don't come back there anymore.
That your house, Louis? You build it? You must be pretty rich to own a house like that.
Stay away from her, too. Just leave her alone.
Good night, Louis.
It didn't do any good. He wouldn't listen. He just made me look like a fool, and he enjoyed doing it. I went back to the ranch. I was really angry. Well, I knew I had to do something about Lucille and Archie and, you know, the whole business. So when I got home, I went upstairs and checked in on grandfather. Heard his pill dispenser buzzing. Grandfather's pill dispenser's buzzing.
So?
Grandfather, wake up. It's time to take your pill. Here you go. That's it. Take a drink. Got it? I gave grandfather his medicine, something Lucille should have done. And I went to talk to her. I meant to tell her that we'd had enough of her neglect, but I didn't. I gave in again.
Did Archie frighten my little boy? Well, never you mind, because Nursey's gonna put him to bed.
I just couldn't help it, Mr. Petrocelli.
Louis, look at me.
Anyway, later I went back to my room and fell asleep. I don't know how long I'd been asleep. A couple of hours, maybe. I looked at the clock when I woke up, and it was about 4 a.m. I was uptight, and I was ashamed. The whole situation had gotten out of hand. I went to tell Lucy that she'd have to leave the next day. I wasn't going to stand for it anymore. Then I saw her. She was dead on the floor, and that syringe. I got real scared. I didn't know who to call for help, and grandfather was asleep. I didn't know where Mr. Granger was. I panicked, and I got out of there. I ran. I didn't run away. I was just running. Just running. I didn't kill her. I didn't kill anybody.
You sure wanted to, kid. You sure wanted to.
No, my grandfather was there. He might have heard something. Ask him, please. Please believe me.
Did anybody tell you about your grandfather?
No, what about him?
He died the same night as Lucille Bates. Okay, Louis, you want me to believe you? I'll believe you. We'll see what we can do, kid. Hey, Pete, now you could use this Jeep for Halloween. What'd you do, go through a car wash backwards?
All it needs is a little wash, Tony.
A wash? This needs sandblasting. Mr. Granger. Now listen, I meant to ask you. You said you got in late that night.
Mr. Petrocelli, I was down Las Manchas picking up a couple of breeders. I was away for about 3 weeks. I didn't get back till 3:30 that morning.
You were driving all night?
Driving straight through. Mr. Baldwin's light was on. I went up to tell him about the trip.
You found the old man dead?
I found Mr. Baldwin dead.
Well, his natural causes.
He'd been a very sick man. I went to tell the nurse. I found her body. I couldn't find Lewis, so I called the police.
You see, according to the police, your call came through at 3:58. Now, what I want to ask you, Mr. Granger, is, are you sure about getting here at 3:30?
Yes, sir. 3:32.
That'll allow you some time then to find the old man, excuse me, Mr. Baldwin, and the Bates body, and then look for Lewis. That'll give you about 16 minutes left over. Is that about right, Pete?
Yeah, Tony, that's just about right.
Oh, Mr. Granger?
I came here during the Depression, out of the Dust Bowl. 14 years old, on my own. Mr. Baldwin gave me a job. He showed me how to keep myself clean, showed me how to have some pride, taught me how to deal with cattle. He had a son that wasn't worth much, a grandson worth maybe 3 points less, at least around this ranch. He was the biggest, finest, strongest man I ever knew. He gave me my life. You think that might account for me sitting next to him for 16 minutes?
Yeah, that might account for it.
You're sure they don't come separately? Well, that's all they sent us. Okay, Mr. Kessel. Thank you. Goodbye. Hi.
Talk to me.
Well, I've just been talking to half the hardware stores in San Remo. None of them have flush valves. In fact, they all said they never heard of a toilet coming without one.
You know, I wonder if the guy who invented indoor plumbing had as much trouble as we've got. I mean, how do they expect us to get that part? Steal it?
Or buy another marble master.
Well, they always say that 2 heads are better than 1, but we can't afford it.
Oh, that's about as funny as this is.
It's a police report, huh?
Mm-hmm. Pete brought it by. I've got him checking A&B, Acme, and Pioneer hardware stores. Hey, you know, there's something interesting in there.
Got fingerprints, huh? Yeah, well, according to this, there were no fingerprints in the murder weapon.
Anthony J. Petrocelli. Oh, how you doing, Melvin? Uh-huh, yeah, I'll tell him. About 30 minutes? Okay, goodbye. That was Melvin Pollock. He wants you to meet him at the Courthouse Plaza in about 30 minutes. And he said, please.
Real gentleman. Okay. You finish this, will you, darling?
You know I hate root beer.
Well, pretend we're rich and think it's brandy.
Brandy.
A&B Hardware, Acme Hardware, Pioneer Hardware, and they never even heard of a flush valve with a brass couplet.
Hey, how you doing, Mel? You just tell him that some young man's life depends on it. You know Melvin Pollock, Deputy District Attorney, Sage of San Remo.
You bet. How are you, Mel?
How you doing?
I got to call a distributor in Phoenix.
Hey, when you come back to the cops, Pete?
As soon as they get rid of Sheriff Ironhide. You know, I heard that he was caught wearing a dress.
I don't believe that guy.
Hey, what's this, flush valve business all about?
Oh, come on, don't kid her, Melvin. It's a very important clue in the Lewis Baldwin matter that you're wasting your time on.
Come on.
I am surprised that nobody in your organization told you about that
Please,
yet.
please, you're undermining my confidence.
Seriously, Mel, what do you think about the case, huh?
Me? I love it. I'm probably going to make senator on this case, Tony. Look, the family's got more money than the law allows, right?
Yeah.
The long, hot summer.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's in the house but Lewis Baldwin and a very well-built nurse, right? Now, what with one thing and another, they take to spending their nights in each other's bedrooms.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Do you really think something could have been going on there? What do we really got here? We got the kid all upset with the nurse. Wouldn't you be upset?
Me? I would have killed her.
That's the difference between you and Lewis. And what else we got here? We got that phony stepbrother for openers. We got that guy, Martin Granger, who found the old man dead. You know, he'd cut your throat just for leaving the cap off the toothpaste.
Come on, Counselor, stop counting me. What we got here is a whole sick relationship with a nurse. And then he threatened Archie LaSalle.
Stay away from my house. Don't come back there anymore.
That your house, Lewis? You build it? You must be pretty rich to own a house like that.
Stay away from her, too. Just leave her alone.
Good night, Lewis.
Listen, Tony, he came home all hot and bothered, and he took it out on Lucy, the happy homemaker. Only this time it didn't work. Lois stalked him to her room. That's his own admission.
Did Archie frighten my little boy? Well, never you mind. Oh, so you're going to be a big man tonight. Well, that's okay, because I'd like... So you're really going to play tough? Big tough? No.
She could play rough, too. She told him to get out of her room.
Don't you come back.
Kid blew his cool, reached for the syringe. It could happen to any red-blooded young American boy this day and age.
Okay, maybe you got a case. I'm not going to argue with you. I'll give you motivation. I'll give you opportunity. I'll even give you circumstances. But sticking a syringe in the back of her head, you got to stand there and tell the jury that he planned it all out ahead of time? You're a nice boy, Melvin. I wish I had a son like you.
Maggie, no matter what we say, it's going to be our fault. Hi there. I got some good news and some bad news.
I'll take the bad news.
I called a distributor in Phoenix. He never heard of a flush valve with a brass coupling. He said to call a Mr. Doubleday at the factory at Winchester, Massachusetts.
Mr. Doubleday, he had an awful head cold. He said they didn't have any parts because the factory went on strike.
Well, the strike can't last forever.
Mr. Doubleday said
The last time they were out 4 years.
You two make a terrific team.
You see, I told you, all our fault.
You're right. We quit.
That's the good news.
Nope. This is the good news. Meet the real Archie LaSalle.
Friend, stepbrother, what's the difference?
Well, it could be a big difference to Lewis.
Yeah? Why?
Supposing he was just a little hung up on your friend.
No kidding. She never said nothing.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you something. Maybe Lucille Bates and Archie LaSalle had a couple mutual friends in California. Names of a nurse, Lucille Benson, and her friend, Archie Lefebvre. Did you ever hear of him?
The gotcha gonna get soap on it.
It's funny, the California cops heard of him. You know, it seems this nurse Benson took everything out of a patient's home that wasn't nailed down and passed them on to Archie.
You threatening me, counselor?
Oh, no. No, if I were threatening you, you'd know it.
Honey, sure sounded like you were threatening me with something. How would you like it if I threatened you, huh?
Time to get a tiny knot to bait that dog in the pool.
See? Everybody's threatening everybody.
baby.
You think Lewis really killed that nurse?
Well, police think that since there were no signs of forced entry through any of the doors or the windows...
I ask what you think.
May I continue? There had to be somebody that was in the house. Since old man Baldwin was already dead, she surely didn't give herself the shiv, and that somebody left, of course, was our boy.
She said he sounded so sincere.
Yeah, well, it's famous for his word, you know. I didn't do it.
Did he or didn't he?
It was a CIA interrogation. I mean, I wouldn't be the first lawyer that was taken in by a note of sincerity in a client's voice, and I'm not going to be the last. I mean, I've got to deal with the facts. My job is to defend that kid the best way I know how, with whatever means I have at hand. Oh, boy. My wife, a Supreme Court justice.
Crazy Italian.
Hey, you idiot! What do you think you're doing? This is a parking lot! Hey, Sheriff!
Look, Sheriff, I called you last night, but you didn't even send out a car to investigate. I don't know what kind of department you're running, but if I were you, I'd trade in those badges for a bunch of unemployment books.
Me, the County of San Remo, and Mr. Anthony Petrocelli, complainant, would like to know where you were and what you were doing from about 10 o'clock last night to 8 o'clock this morning.
Just go ahead, start right in, Archie. We'll sort it out later.
I worked all night with 6 other guys.
Where?
The dog track here. You want to talk to the boss?
There's a phone right over there.
Hey, Tony. This here fella is named Verdicchio. Mr. Verdicchio, this is Mr. Petrocelli.
Paisano.
Paisano.
Come on.
He's a plumber. He says he can make the flush valve with the brass coupler. He says he can make it.
Ah, il signor Ether ti ha spiegato il problema?
Ma sì, questo non è un problema. Io sono un artista, questo è niente per me, sì.
Per le guarigioni di porcellana.
Oh, anche quello, sì, anche quello.
E quanto costerà?
$55.
Get him out of here.
Ma che va, venuto qua 10 minuti per niente, ma che... Yeah, you're making a lot of new friends around here, Petrocelli. Old Archie doesn't even own a gun.
You don't have to own one to shoot one, Sheriff.
Not in my experience, you don't.
Let me tell you my experience. You filed a false complaint trying to harass a state's witness. One more move like that, you'll end up in the slammer.
Tu sei un mascarato.
See you, baby.
to repeat to the jury, Mr. Granger, you say that the testimony you have offered in this courtroom is the truth as to the best of your recollection. Now, isn't that right?
It is.
Thank you. Cross-examine.
Thank you, Melvin. Mr. Granger, are you single or married, sir?
Single now. Mrs. Granger passed away 11 years ago.
You live alone, I take it?
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin was a friend of yours?
Yes.
A revered friend, a dear friend?
Oh, yes.
How would you classify Lucille Bates, Mr. Granger?
I don't follow you.
Well, was the victim a friend or an enemy?
Objection to this line of questioning, completely irrelevant.
What do you have in mind, Mr. Petrocelli?
Very simply, Your Honor. Lucille Bates was young and attractive, and in fact, the only young lady in the Baldwin household. Mr. Granger is single and alone, and they came in frequent contact with one another. I simply wanted to explore their association.
Overruled. The witness will answer the question.
I had no feeling about it one way or another.
Oh. Did you approve of the way she attended to Mr. Baldwin, the way she took care of him?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
She was careless. She was matter of fact.
What about the way she attended to the household? Did you approve of that?
No.
What about her association with the defendant?
No.
Then you did have some feelings about her.
Objection.
One way or the other.
And what was your conclusion, Sheriff?
Mr. Baldwin died of natural causes 3 hours before she was killed. So I had to conclude my suspicions on the defendant.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Petrocelli.
Now, let's go back a little bit, shall we? Now, you said that you instituted the search for the defendant when you what, Sheriff?
When I learned he was missing.
Was he suspect at the time?
No. No, not at all.
Well, what was he then? Was he a material witness?
Possibly.
Well, possibly or probably?
Probably. I mean, my job was to interview all members of the family, acquaintances, anyone else that could give me any pertinent information.
Then after you apprehended him and questioned him...
Talk to him.
I stand corrected. Talk to him. Now, at what point in the conversation did his status change from material witness to suspect? Do you remember?
Well, I can't give you the exact time.
Was it 1 hour? Was it 2 hours? Was it 6 hours?
5 or 6 hours after he was taken into custody, his story began to be conflicting. It simply didn't bear out the facts.
Which facts? Which particular facts?
Answer the question, Sheriff. Well, as far as I could ascertain, the defendant was having an affair with the victim. According to another source, he was jealous of her.
Let me just see if I can get this straight now. In other words, you found out the defendant was having an affair with an older woman. So you jumped to the conclusion then that in a jealous rage...
I didn't jump to anything, Petrocelli. I did what I had to do after I'd made a careful and complete investigation of all the circumstances.
Yet 2 hours after you'd been on the scene of the crime, you were reported to have said, and I have affidavits from 3 witnesses, quote, "Let's get the little punk. We know he did it." Is that what you call a complete and careful investigation?
Objection.
Sustained. Mr. Petrocelli.
My apologies, Your Honor. I'm through with this witness. You know what I'd like to do this evening?
What's that?
I would like to not think about Lewis, the Baldwins, or anything having to do with that case. I tell you. I think I would just like to think about you.
I like that. Are you hungry?
Always.
I'm talking about dinner.
Oh, well, no, I could eat.
How about some fried chicken? Mashed potatoes, country gravy, and homemade biscuits.
You know, you really amaze me. Here you are, working all day long in the office, just like me, and you think absolutely nothing of going home and cooking dinner.
Well, it isn't anything.
No, that's not true. No, I want to tell you something. You're terrific, and I just want you to know that I really appreciate that.
There is something that I would appreciate.
You name it.
Well, when we get to the canyon crossing, Would you mind stopping? I'd like to pick up some chicken supreme.
You got me, my cook.
Although already submitted in transcript, just for the record, Your Honor, I would like the coroner of San Remo County to explain the cause of death to the jury.
Very well.
The deceased met her death due to respiratory failure and internal hemorrhage resulting from damage to the spinal nerve in the lower region of the occipital area.
Defense has read the coroner's report and will stipulate as to cause of matter and death, Your Honor.
Very generous. Cross-examine.
Doc, what is, oh, excuse me, how do you pronounce your name? Is that O'Mahony or O'Mahony?
Any way you want it, Counselor.
Well, thank you, Doc. What is rigor mortis, Doc?
Well, in a layman's terms, a stiffening process in the limbs and joints that occurs following death.
Mm-hmm. And what is livor mortis, in layman's terms?
The body fluids, the blood, all seek their own level and eventually reach a state of coagulation following death.
Did you examine Lucille Bates's body for signs of livor mortis and rigor mortis?
I did.
Did you also examine the body of George Baldwin Sr. for signs of rigor mortis and livor mortis?
No.
Well, why not? He was a corpse, too.
I only determined he was dead. I had no right to do any more since I was aware that Mr. Baldwin had been under the care of a private physician.
You know, that seems pretty funny to me, you know, Doc? 2 corpses in the house and you only examine 1.
Funny or not, it's a state law. I had no authority.
Just a second, Doc. I want to show you something. Did you ever see this before? This is your report of Mr. Baldwin's death. You noted that he died somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock. How'd you determine that, Doc, without examining the body?
That determination was confirmed by Mr. Baldwin's own private physician, Dr. Prosper.
Forget about Dr. Prosper. I asked you how you determined it.
The automatic pill dispenser hadn't clicked over after 2 o'clock. The 1 o'clock dosage had been used, so that indicated that Mr. Baldwin had taken his medication up until that time.
Mm-hmm. Then what you're saying is that since the 2 o'clock medication had not been dispensed, the 1 o'clock had, then it was logical to assume that Mr. Baldwin died somewhere after 1 o'clock, but before 2 o'clock. Is that correct?
That's about it.
Isn't that a pretty unprofessional way to determine Mr. Baldwin's death, Doc?
I think I explained before. It wasn't official.
It was official enough to be entered into the official police record. Doc.
Agitated.
Yes.
Angry.
Yes.
Agitated enough, angry enough to have committed murder that night?
Objection. You're on a may approach the bench.
You may.
He's leading the witness on. He can't say these things.
Well, finish your objection, and I'll instruct the jury to disregard it.
And pretend they didn't hear it? Now, how do you suggest they unhear it? I want you to declare a mistrial.
Make a motion.
Motion for mistrial.
Denied. What you want and what you get are 2 different things in my court, Mr. Petrocelli. Continue, Counselor.
I'm finished.
Oh? No questions.
Petrocelli?
Well, thanks, bailiff. I want you to think, and I want you to think very carefully about what you did that night you came home. Now, first you saw Lucille, then you went into your grandfather's room. Now, did you give him any medication?
Yes, I did.
Did you look at the machine, the pill dispenser?
Yes.
Was it loaded properly?
No. I mean, it was empty after the last dosage.
Then why didn't you refill it?
Well, I assumed Miss Spates would take care of it. She was in charge of medication.
Now, look, kid. If you've got anything, and I mean anything, that you want to change, you better change it right now.
Nothing, Mr. Petrocelli.
Time. Okay, kid.
asked me to give you this.
Mr. Granger, do you mean to tell me that you were in that room for 16 minutes and never took a look at it?
Why would I? What's your connection, Mr. Petrocelli?
Your Honor, according to the police report, the defendant stated that the pill dispenser was empty when he finished the midnight medication. Yet here it is intact, with only the 1 o'clock dosage missing. Now, I just wondered if Mr. Granger could shed some light on that matter.
Mr. Granger?
I have nothing to offer.
Nothing? Well, did you touch it?
No.
Your Honor, I have here an affidavit signed by Dr. John S. Prosper certifying George Baldwin's death, and I quote, "A definite condition of livor mortis was discovered in the corpse," unquote. Do you have any idea what that means?
No.
Well, it suggests rather strongly that perhaps Mr. Baldwin did not die in his bed.
I don't get you.
Well, I think you do. Mr. Granger, do you own a gun? I can't hear you.
Yes.
You know how to shoot it?
Yes.
Did you shoot at me?
Yes.
A diversionary action, huh? A scare tactic? Oh, you don't want to talk about that, huh? Well, maybe you'd like to tell us all about your great love for Mr. Bailiff,
come in the courtroom. Everybody else, come on.
Well, Mr. Petrocelli.
Your Honor, I'd like to apologize for goading the witness.
We can skip the apologies and get on with it.
Well, Your Honor, if you'll just bear with me, I'd like to explain. It was hot that night. It was a bad night. It was a bad night to be sick. A bad night to be unattended. The pill dispenser signaled that it was time for another dosage, and Mr. Baldwin searched through the trays looking for his medication. He knew that it was important to take these pills on time, so he rang for his nurse. He'd had his last dosage when Louis gave it to him at midnight. The dispenser was empty, and Lucille wasn't answering. She was too busy with her phone conversation and ignored the signal. He was almost 3 hours overdue, and as weak as he was, he knew he had to have his medicine. And he knew he needed help, so he managed to get out of bed and make his way to Lucille's room. And because of the stroke, Mr. Baldwin hadn't been walking for a long time. But now, desperate for those pills, he found the strength to get there.
Why, Granddaddy. Well, you just go right ahead and help yourself. It's right there on the table.
He entered her room, and when Lucille wouldn't help him, he went for the pills himself, knocking the tray and its contents all over the floor.
Chloe's falling flat on his face. Oh, my goodness gracious. Why, Nursey should be so angry with you. Look at this big mess that you have made. My, now, aren't we strong and masculine tonight? Get out now.
Lucille taunted him, and enraged, he reached for the syringe, and in anger, he killed her. He collapsed and died shortly after she did. About a half hour later, Martin Granger came home from Mexico. He'd driven straight through, and when he arrived, he noticed Mr. Baldwin's light was on. Granger was anxious to tell him about the day's cattle transactions and went up to his room. To Granger's surprise, Mr. Baldwin was gone from his room, so he went to check with the nurse to find out what had happened. When he went to her room, he could pretty much guess what had happened, and he pretty much knew what he had to do, and he didn't waste any time with it. He took George Baldwin's body back to his room and placed him in bed, giving the appearance that Mr. Baldwin had died in his sleep of natural causes. Then he went back to Lucille's room. Granger cleaned up the tray, rearranged the medicine containers on the table. He then returned to Mr. Baldwin's room and reloaded the pill dispenser, thus removing suspicion that Mr. Baldwin was in any way involved in the nurse's murder. It took him about 16 minutes to tidy things up. So, in the light of the testimony I've just presented, Your Honor, I move that the charges against my client be dropped and the case dismissed.
Mr. Granger, is Mr. Petrocelli's description accurate?
Yes.
Case dismissed.
It's just that we got off on the wrong foot, Sheriff, and I'm going to be here a long time.
Sorry. Looking forward to working with you again, Sheriff.
That goes double.
So long.
See you around.
One flush valve.